जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यमुना तीरावनचारि, यमुना तीरावनचारि, राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन, यमुना तीरावनचारि, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, जय निताय सची नंदन, निताय सची नंदन, निताय सची नंदन गौर हरे, जय निताय सची नंदन, निताय सची नंदन, निताय सची नंदन गौर हरे, जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद, जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव गुरुदेव, जय जय गुरुदेव, जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव गुरुदेव, जय जय गुरुदेव, जय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल। Hare Krishna, everyone. So we will start with the Mangalacharana prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगल्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौरङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। Hare Krishna. So, welcome to the Sunday feast at ISKCON of Portland. And thank you for this opportunity to serve all of you for my own purification. This week, in a few, this week in a few days is according to Vaishnava calendar. It is the anniversary day of Srila Prabhupada arriving at USA. So I was thinking about glorifying Srila Prabhupada in some capacity, and I found this verse in Bhagavad Gita, verse 18 and 19 from chapter 12. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so can you see the screen?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can see it.
Okay, so we'll chant the verse 3 times and then devotees can chant also. Bhagavad Gita 12.18 and 19. समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जिता तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थिरमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थिरमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थिरमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः. So please chant.
समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समासङ्गा विवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थितमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः.
Anybody else would like to chant?
समः शत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानपमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समः सङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थितमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else?
समाशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समासङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थिरमतिर्भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
So thank you all for chanting nicely. So I have a request for all of our benefit. While we go through the synonyms, word by word meaning, and the translation and purport, of course, if we can remember Srila Prabhupada's pastimes in relation to these qualities, that will help us a lot to relate to this verse and glorify him. So I'd start with synonyms. Sama, equal. Shatrau, to an enemy. Cha, also. Mitre, to a friend. Cha, also. Tatha, so. Mana, in honor. Apamanayo, and dishonor. Shita, in cold. Ushna, heat. Sukha, happiness. Dukheshu, and distress. Sama, equipoised. Sangha vivarjita, free from all association. Tulya, equal. Ninda, in defamation. Stuti, and repute. Mauni, silent. Santushta, satisfied. Yena kenachit, with anything. Aniketa, having no residence. Sthira, fixed. Mati, determination. Bhaktiman, engaged in devotion. Me, to me. Priya, dear. Nara, a man. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: one who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge and who is engaged in devotional service. Such a person is very dear to me. So this is Krishna is glorifying his own pure devotee, and Prabhupada is one such an example, which we are very familiar with through his books and lectures and through his followers. So the purport, it's a short purport, but it's very intense and profound wordings Prabhupada himself had used. A devotee is always free from all bad association. Sometimes one is praised and sometimes one is defamed. That is the nature of human society. But a devotee is always transcendental to artificial fame and infamy, distress or happiness. He is very patient. He does not speak of anything but the topics about Krishna. Therefore, he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials, and the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of the Supreme Lord. A devotee is happy in all conditions. Sometimes he may get very palatable foodstuffs, sometimes not, but he is satisfied. Nor does he care for any residential facility. He may sometimes live underneath a tree, and he may sometimes live in a very palatial building. He is attracted to neither. He is called fixed because he is fixed in his determination and knowledge. We may find some repetition in the descriptions of the qualifications of a devotee, but this is just to emphasize the fact that a devotee must acquire all these qualifications. Without good qualifications, one cannot be a pure devotee. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna. This is from Bhagavatam. One who is not a devotee has no good qualification. One who wants to be recognized as a devotee should develop the good qualifications. Of course, he does not extraneously endeavor to acquire these qualifications, but engagement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service automatically helps him develop them, the qualities. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in this verse, as we can see, Krishna is listing many of the essential qualities of a devotee. And as Prabhupada told, we don't need to endeavor to acquire each and every quality independently. Just by practicing devotional service, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, these qualities are awarded to us. In one sense, spirit soul has got all these qualities. So that means we all have these qualities, but somehow or other we forgot Krishna, and we started not exhibiting these qualities, or we forgot these qualities, or it is covered in some sense by the illusory potency. So it's only reviving these qualities by the process of bhakti. So all these wonderful qualities we can see in Srila Prabhupada himself, equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor. If we try to remember many of his endeavors to satisfy his spiritual master's instruction to preach in the Western world. Even from India, he faced these things. Some people honored him, some people did not respect him, or even was against him, opposing him, his ideas. And heat and cold, he was in India facing the heat summer in Vrindavan and Delhi. And same time when he came to New York, he had to face the coldest weather ever in his life. But he was not getting distracted. His mood was same, his goal was same, and his endeavor to achieve the goal was same. And happiness and distress, even in Jaladuta ship, when he was coming here, he had to face extreme distressful situations, 2 heart attacks and other issues. But he was still keeping his focus at the lotus feet of Guru and Krishna. Fame and infamy also. And he was always free from contaminating association. Sangha here means contaminating association. Even when he was associating with so-called contaminated people, he was not taking their association, but he was giving Krishna to them. That way he was not getting contaminated. Of course, he's pure devotee, but he was showing us how to associate with those kind of people who are not so good in a sense, or who were not carrying good consciousness. But still, how do we give them our association, not without getting contaminated? He was demonstrating that throughout his life. And he was always silent. Again, he nicely described silent means not that keeping quiet, but talking only Krishna Katha, or glorifying Krishna and his devotees, nothing else. Even if we have to talk about other things, material, so-called material things, if our intention and consciousness is pure, that means if we are aware that everything belongs to Krishna, everything is Krishna's energy, and there is a particular way we have to utilize those energies in service to Krishna, then we are still talking about Krishna. So he was silent in that sense, but he was always, as we know, he was most of the time he was talking to different kinds of people, but he was silent as per this verse. And then very obvious that he was always satisfied with anything, whatever he gets, whichever condition of life he had to go through, he was satisfied. With who doesn't care for any residence? As we know, he had to live in small rooms. The first year when he came to USA, he was living in a very pathetic condition, basement, and without bathroom and without even window, things like that. Very, very difficult situations. And then later his disciples provided him very nice residence and facilities, but he was not enjoying his senses through those facilities, but he was still continuing his service. And who is fixed in knowledge, of course, we know his scriptural depth of his scriptural knowledge, and then engaged in devotion service, of course. So all these qualities were demonstrated by Srila Prabhupada. And then this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very, very famous verse. Let me get that verse. This Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavat Yakinchana Sarvair Gunais Tatra Samasate Surah Harava Bhaktasya Kuto Mahadguna Manorathe Nasati Dhavato Bahi. So the important thing here is Sarvair Gunais Tatra Samasate Surah. So all the demigods and their exalted qualities such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then for non-devotees, as Prabhupada mentioned, it's not easy to get these qualities. Even if they endeavor to get these qualities, it is not sustainable. At some point, when they reach a threshold, they will lose their temper and they violate their nice behavior, etc. So it is not possible to acquire these qualities just by mundane endeavor or mental adjustment. The one and only way to achieve or acquire these qualities is by devotional service this will manifest in the body. It's not like we are acquiring on ourselves, but Krishna is awarding these qualities, or Krishna is enabling us to manifest these qualities which we forgot due to the ignorance, right? So I'll stop sharing. I was inspired by a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 25, verse 21. This is the context is Lord Kapiladev is instructing his mother Devahuti. So Devahuti knew Kapiladev is the supreme person, and then she was expressing her difficulties to overcome the illusory energy. She's a pure devotee, but it's a pastime also. So responding to her question, Lord Kapaladev started explaining about the Sankhya philosophy and what is matter and the illusory energy, etc. So during that conversation, he was describing the qualities of a pure devotee, and which is very essential for us to understand. That way we will know who is a pure devotee, and then he is going to give a very important instruction to all of us, which by the mercy of Prabhupada, he made himself available to us for following that instruction. So verse 21 of Canto 3, chapter 25, very famous verse, which goes like this: Titikshava karunika suhrida sarvadehinam ajata shatrava shanta sadhava sadhu bhushana. So this describes about the sadhu bhushana, qualities of a pure devotee. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant. Titikshava means tolerant, and karunika means merciful. Suhrida Sarvadehinam, that means friendly to all living entities. And Ajata Shatrava, he has no enemies. Shantaha, he is peaceful in all situations. And Sadhava abides by the scriptures. So these are the qualities or characteristics of sublime qualities of a pure devotee. So we can see all these qualities were exhibited by Srila Prabhupada. Again, he did not have to endeavor to exhibit this quality at this time, etc., because he is a pure devotee, and these simply manifest in him without even endeavoring for that. That is the symptom of a pure devotee. We know that there are fake sadhus, especially in India and maybe many other places these days. They try to behave as if they are compassionate or tolerant or friendly to all, etc. But at some point of time they will fail. In different situations we have many stories, so we don't need to specifically endeavor to become like this, but we just follow the process of bhakti and this will be manifested. So if you think about tolerance of Srila Prabhupada, there are many pastimes where he was exhibiting this quality. Again, tolerance and compassion will go together in parallel. If we cannot tolerate, we cannot be compassionate. It's as simple as that. There are multiple stories, especially when he was getting ready to come to the Western world. Before even he got the confirmation from Sumati Morarji, who gave the cargo ship ticket, etc. He was trying this way, that way, approaching many people, but most of the time he couldn't get a positive response. So he was tolerating, even though these people are coming from Indian background, Vedic background. They knew who Krishna is and they knew the importance of these philosophy, etc. But still they were not supporting him. But he was simply being tolerant and waiting for that right time to come. So he waited for so long, as we know. And then finally he got into the cargo ship. Again, he had to go through different difficult situations, but he faced those. And after coming to USA, he had to face so much difficulties. Even David Allen, one of the person with whom he was living in a Bowery kind of weird place, he was threatened by David Allen. He could have killed Srila Prabhupada. But he was tolerating all those situations and still trying to make him a devotee. But at some point he had to leave because he was becoming too violent, that his service was getting interrupted, etc. So he had to leave that place. But still that person got mercy because he was living with Srila Prabhupada. Imagine somebody is living in the same room with Srila Prabhupada. So he was tolerating all those things. And there is this pastime I read recently. This happened in 1975. Srila Prabhupada was traveling with his servant, so in a flight. So there was a bunch of people, actually the South African football team, the whole team was there. I'm sure around 20 people must be there. They just played with Kenya and they won the game, and then they were in that joyful mood. So we can imagine how the mood they are going to express. They are not going to do some Harinam party, but they will be having a lot of alcohol and things like that. So in the flight, even though the flight was a non-smoking flight, these people were in a rowdy mood. They were drunk and they were smoking cigarettes and things like that, making a lot of weird noise, etc. Now, Prabhupada was sitting peacefully. He was not making any complaints or anything like that. But his servant got a little bit angry, Pushta Krishna Maharaj. So he wanted to stop this nonsense. So he called the air hostess and told her, okay, this is the non-smoking area. Please ask them to stop it. So she went and politely told them to stop it. And then she went back to her duties. But they were completely unconscious and having fun in some sense, their own way. They did not listen to that. They continued to smoke and making noises. Now Pushpa Krishna Maharaj couldn't stay there, so he was very angry and he was about to stand and go there. So immediately Srila Prabhupada recognized where he is going and what he is going to do. So he told, where are you going, Pushpa Krishna? So he told, okay, Prabhupada, they are smoking and I have to stop. So Prabhupada very calmly told, just sit down. And then after he sat, so Prabhupada told him, what is the difference between us and them if we cannot tolerate? No, they are not able to tolerate, they are doing nonsense. That is correct. But if we are going to fight back, then what is the difference? We are devotees, right? So he was tolerating those very difficult situations. A sadhu, especially elderly person, even we cannot tolerate somebody smoking in a closed room. That flight is like a closed room. So he was exhibiting the quality of a devotee. Of course, different situations he was behaving differently externally, but internal consciousness was same all the time. And then compassion, it is very, very obvious. We know all of us are here only because he was compassionate. So when he came to United States, he was dealing with hippies and people who did not even know how to behave properly in a public area or behave properly to a new person, etc. So he was following his spiritual master's footsteps. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj also gave initiation to many, many persons who were not fit to become a devotee in a Vedic sense, in a Brahmanical sense. They have rules and regulations. If you follow that, then only you will be given initiation, etc. Of course, Prabhupada also had these rules and regulations, but if somebody was ready to follow those rules and regulations, and if somebody was ready to chant 16 rounds every day, he just gave initiation without looking their background and their possible behavioral issues, which might continue for some more time. Still, he was giving initiation left and right. Even he gave sannyas to many disciples just to make sure they are able to preach, because becoming a sannyasi means people will respect and hear from them. So just for the sake of those higher purposes, Prabhupada even gave sannyas to many disciples who would have to wait for longer time at present day circumstance. But this is his compassion. Even though he knew that there could be issues by giving sannyas to them. As we know, some of the sannyasis couldn't survive in that ashram, so they had to leave sannyas ashram and take up grihastha ashram. Some of the disciples left the movement also, but all of them got his mercy. So at some point of their life, this life or next life or other lifetime, they will become a pure devotee and go back home, back to Godhead. So that was his very, very highly compassionate nature. Again, he was always compassionate, whether he was chastising his disciples or, becoming kind to his disciples in a physical and external way. Now, the third one was Suhrida Sarvadehinam, Suhridam Sarvadehinam. We hear the same that from Bhagavad Gita. This verse is Suhrida Sarvadehinam, and Bhagavad Gita 5:29, the famous verse, Bhoktaram Yatnyatapasam Sarvalokam Heshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, which are same. Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna is telling, I am friendly to or friend of all the living entities. Now Kapiladev here speaks about a pure devotee. A pure devotee is also friendly to all living entities, not only to human beings, but all living entities. So Prabhupada was friendly to all living entities. We have many pastimes wherein he is demonstrating this. Of course, cow protection, he gave utmost importance to cow protection because cows are so dear to Krishna. But apart from cows, he was kind enough to different living entities. Monkeys in Vrindavan, we have pastimes. And there is this pastime in Mayapur. His servant Shrutakirti Das was describing this. So when Prabhupada used to honor Mahaprasad, now disciples used to make a very nice plate, nice plate with small bowls and different items, chapatis, sabjis, rice, dal, other curries and sweets, etc. Nicely arranged, and then it will be kept on his table. Now it is, Mayapur, so it's a common thing in India that ants used to come all over the house. Wherever there is some food, especially sweet, the ants will come. So now in his room, somehow the ants knew that this is Prabhupada's prasad honoring time. So they already came into the room. Prabhupada is seeing that he did not, ask the disciples to take care of the ants. He was keeping quiet. The ants started climbing through the legs of the table. He has a little table where prasadam was kept. So now ants were coming onto the table and they started settling down around the plate. They haven't started eating. Now Prabhupada started honoring the prasadam in a Vedic way. First chapati, sabji, then rice, dal, etc. So the ants were waiting. As soon as they find out that Prabhupada has finished chapati, sabji, and then moved to the next item, they started, attacking the sabji items a little bit. Then Prabhupada moved to the sweets, and then after Prabhupada completed the sweets, then the ants knew that, okay, now we are having more freedom. Prabhupada has finished. So they all jumped into the plate and started attacking the prasadam or honoring the prasadam, the sweets. Now, as soon as Shrutakirti Prabhu saw this, he did not want a lot of ants to be in the plate because now it is the disciples' turns to honor the Mahaprasadam of their spiritual master. So he wanted to, remove the ants. So Prabhupada very quietly told, the ants are not going to eat so much. They will take a little bit, let them do that, and they will leave. Don't worry. So he was very compassionate. And interestingly, Shrutakirti Prabhu told this was not happening just one time. This was a routine. Prabhupada will start honoring prasadam. Ants will come and wait. And then as soon as Prabhupada finishes, ants will jump in. And he was telling there is some connection between a pure devotee and the ants. Ants are also spirit souls, just that they are in this little ant's body. So this shows that he was naturally a Suhrida, friend of all living entities. And many other pastimes we are aware of. And the next one is Ajata Shatrava, is no enemies. Ajata Shatrava means one who has no enemies. So Prabhupada told once, if a sadhu has enemy, then how can he be compassionate? It may seem like externally Prabhupada is inimical to this person or this group of persons, so-called Mayavadis or so-called scientists. He was inimical, but no, he might be calling them rascal or fool or demon, etc. But his heart was full of compassion. The intention to speak in that way was to let them know that they are wrong or they are going in the wrong path. So if they have a little bit of openness in their heart, they can accept Prabhupada's instruction. That was his intention. So they were not enemies. So everyone was friends for Srila Prabhupada. So he was I was trying to mention about Vidura. Vidura is a pure devotee. So Vidura chastised Dhritarashtra, and it was heavy chastisement, really heavy chastisement. But it was out of compassion, and it worked out. Finally, Dhritarashtra could understand the mood of Vidura, why he is telling like that. Similarly, Prabhupada was not inimical, but he was simply compassionately instructing or trying to instruct different kinds of people in different ways. And he was always peaceful. So I remember a past time when Srila Prabhupada was invited by many of his disciples to see the drawing, the pictures which was painted by some of the devotees. So they had multiple pictures, and they wanted Srila Prabhupada to see the pictures and give them some feedback whether this is okay or this is not okay. That way they can continue, drawing these pastimes of Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So he was having a very joyful time with them. He was giving some good feedback and some instructions and making jokes and smiling and laughing, etc. And all of a sudden, he had a little bell on his table. He rang his bell, and that is connected to his one of his servant in another room. So the servant knew that now Prabhupada is calling him for some, whatever. So the servant suddenly came in front of Srila Prabhupada and paid obeisances. And as soon as the servant got into the room, Prabhupada's external mood got changed completely. He started chastising left and right to that servant. And the devotees, his other disciples who were in the room, they really got kind of surprised and frozen. They got frozen. Some of them could not even hear what Srila Prabhupada was speaking. Some kind of heavy chastisement. And then as soon as the disciple who came faced the chastisement, that disciple understood what Srila Prabhupada is telling and why he's telling, and then he heard all these chastisement and paid obeisances and left the room. As soon as that devotee left the room, all of a sudden, without any time, Prabhupada came back to his own joyful mood and started continuing those jokes and laughing and talking about the pictures, etc. So the disciples really got surprised how a person can move from this completely angry mood back to this joyful mood, because he was always peaceful. Even while he was chastising, internally he was peaceful, but there was a purpose for his chastisement. That way the person could be corrected and then saved from the entanglements of Maya. So he was showing he was peaceful in that way also. Whether I'm in this situation, that situation, this mood, or whatever, internally he was always peaceful. Now the last one is sadhava, means abiding by the rules and regulations of the scriptures. Now a pure devotee doesn't need to follow all the rules and regulations. I mean, it's tricky, doesn't need to follow. Naturally they follow the rules and regulations. So for them it is not a regulation anymore, not a rule anymore. It is their second nature. So Prabhupada was, as we know, very obvious all the time. He was following the scriptures. So going back to Lord Kapiladev's instruction to Mother Devahuti, that was verse 21. So this is very, very interesting and very instructing to all of us. So Kapila Dev is continuing his instruction after describing the qualities of a pure devotee. He is mentioning such a sadhu. Such a sadhu means the sadhu who exhibits these qualities described now, titikshava, karunika, etc. Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Now, this is spoken by Kapila Dev in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then think about Srila Prabhupada. What did he do? When he was, of course, the pastime was his wife sold his Bhagavatam to get something else, to get tea, something like that. And then he did not like that and he left his home, he left his family. But of course, he had plans to leave home. That was not just the reason, it just happened to be a an occasion, that's all. But we know that he left his family. He had children, a nice wife, and he left all of them. And then he left his friendly acquaintances. Wherever he was living, he had, of course, some family, friends, etc. So he was following the scripture exactly. Of course, one has to have enough qualification to do that, and it should be according to the guidance of Guru. It cannot be done whimsically. Kapila Dev told, so let me leave my family, etc. That's not the point. But Prabhupada got the instruction from his spiritual master to preach in the Western world. So that multiple times that instruction was given. So it was obvious for him that he had to leave his family and friends to do that service. So, but he was following the scripture. And then in the next verse, verse 23, Kapila Dev continues, engaged constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from material miseries. Yes, they will go through material miseries, but they do not suffer from material miseries because they are always filled with thoughts of my pastimes and activities. So we know Srila Prabhupada went through unlimited material miseries, but all the time he was with Krishna. He was, as mentioned here, filled with thoughts of Krishna's pastimes and activities, and because of that, he was always in ecstasy. He did not feel that this is suffering. He was feeling that's how pure devotees feel. Even all the Goswamis and Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they were put into jail by the king, and still they were not feeling that suffering, but they were trying to see how can I serve, how can I get out of this and go back to Lord Chaitanya and do my service, etc. So we can see that from Haridas Thakur and all the devotees. There are many pastimes, but we don't have time to go to that extent. But Prabhupada had to suffer 3 heart attacks and so much of miseries. But an ordinary person cannot survive that much of suffering. That person would have come back, and we know that some other God brothers, Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaja's disciples, God brothers of Srila Prabhupada, they went to London and they could not, succeed in their duties, and they came back. But Prabhupada did not do that way. He was just focusing on his goal, which is to fulfill his Guru's instruction, and he achieved success. And in the next verse, Kapila Dev continues calling his mother, "O my mother, O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment." So the only way we can manifest these qualities is when we are completely devoid of material attachment. So Prabhupada was completely free from all attachment. And then Kapila Dev continues, you must seek attachment to such holy men. This is very, very important for us. At least I was inspired by this line. You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. So the only way to become free from material attachment is by seeking attachment to such holy men like Srila Prabhupada. And Prahlad Maharaj also speaks about the same instruction in Canto 7, Mahiyasam Padarajobhishekam, that verse, by taking the lotus feet of the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. That's only way to come out of this material entanglement. So if Srila Prabhupada was not ready to fulfill his Guru's instruction, imagine that situation. That means if Srila Prabhupada was not becoming available to all of us to take shelter of his lotus feet, then how do we come out of this material attachment? The pure devotee has the empowerment, the qualification, but if the pure devotee is not ready to be in that position to accept all of us, then we don't have any shelter. Even if Krishna is there, it's not easy to go to Krishna directly. So Prabhupada was ready, even though he had to go through all these difficult situations. And even though he had the nice arrangement in Vrindavan, when he went to Vrindavan, he got nice association there, multiple temples. In Radhanaba, the temple, there was Rupa Goswami's Samadhi and Bhajan Kutir and other Goswamis and nice deities and nice devotee association, scriptures. He could have simply lived there peacefully, but he did not choose that. He stayed there for some time, but then he wanted to come to the West. And that, even for people from India, because he came to West and then came back with the Western devotees, Indians accepted him, and then we are all here under his shelter, pretty much enjoying our life in some sense by following the bhakti process. That is in the verse 25, Kapiladev's instruction. This is very famous verse. Satam prasangan mama virya samvedo bhavanti harit karna rasayana katha yajjoshanadhyashu apavarga sadmani shraddharatir bhaktir anukramishati. How to this shows the path to follow, how to become a pure devotee. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. So we hear the pastimes through our ears, and then it comes to our heart, and then that gives us enjoyment, the real eternal happiness. Now, by cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. So the real devotion, the pure devotional service begins later. Even though we are going through the sadhana bhakti, we have to. Then we can reach there. By cultivating this knowledge, gradually we becomes advanced. Then we become freed from the material entanglement, and then the attraction to Krishna will be fixed. But we need the pure devotee association. The verse starts with Satam Prasangan, in the association of pure devotees. That is a starting point. Without that, we cannot reach the other end. Unless we start from the right starting point, we will not reach the goal. So Prabhupada was very compassionate. He is compassionate even now. So I'll stop with this little pastime. Again, this shows his extreme compassion. So this happened at the later stages of his life in this material world. 1977, Prabhupada was very sick. He was in Bombay. Even though he was very sick, he could not eat anything. He was just drinking some juice, a little bit of juice, half a cup or little amount of juice. That's all. Even his body limbs were not working properly. He was like only bone figure, not much flesh. But still he wanted to go to London just to give his association, Satam Prasangan, Pure Devotees Association. Doctors told, we cannot do much, etc. So at that time, there was the Pancharatrika Pandits from Bangalore. His name was Sampat Kumar. He wanted to, his Bhattacharya, Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya, he wanted to meet Prabhupada face to face. So he took a flight from Bangalore and he came to Bombay. So that time Prabhupada was not encouraging private meetings. Of course, he was going through difficult situations. But since he came all the way from Bangalore in flight and he really wanted to meet, etc., somehow he was allowed. So he came into his room for a private meeting. That means all his disciples and servants, they were going out. I mean, they had to go out. So this person started speaking to Prabhupada, and later he shared this conversation. So he expressed that he's feeling very pain by seeing Prabhupada's condition, this much suffering. So Prabhupada, he was laying down, he told that yes, Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. He was still preaching. Bhagavad Gita talks about the world is meant for suffering, so I am suffering, it's quite natural. That's what he told. He did not tell, oh, I have this pain, I have that pain. No, he was not complaining. But this Bhattacharya, raised a concern that Prabhupada, so many people, you have disciples, followers, they are depending on you, and then they cannot survive when you suffer. When you suffer, they are also suffering. So Prabhupada, just told, what can I do? I'm supposed to suffer in this world, and I have to suffer. But then the Bhattacharya told very important thing. In Vrindavan temple, devotees already made a deity of Srila Prabhupada, and they started worshipping his deity form on the altar. And then they do the puja, they offer flowers to him, etc. So this Bhattacharya mentioned in Shastra, in Pancharatra, there is a mention that if the Acharya is living in the world, and at the same time, if his deity is on the altar and if the deity is being worshipped, then these people who are worshipping the deity form of Acharya, who is also living elsewhere in the world, the suffering of all those people will come to the Acharya through the deity form. So from the deity form of Prabhupada, it will come to the Prabhupada's body. That's what Bhattacharya is mentioning. And then, so he wanted Prabhupada to instruct his devotees, disciples, to stop that deity worship. That way Prabhupada will not get that much suffering. That was his intention. But Prabhupada told, I know what is happening. I am very well aware of that, and that's okay. I came to this world to take their suffering. So there is no problem with me to take their suffering. And then the conversation went on, and then later Prabhupada also told, Bhattacharya told that, Prabhupada, do you have anything else to say before I leave? Then Prabhupada told, even when I leave this body and leave this planet, I will keep continuing taking their suffering and make them free so they can keep chanting Hare Krishna. That was his compassion. And he is doing that. He taught us how to worship his deity forms, Guru Puja and Vyasa Puja, how to celebrate, etc. And then he is taking the suffering of all of us. And then he is giving us this opportunity to minimize our suffering so that we can chant Hare Krishna and continue our devotional service very nicely and free us from this material entanglement. Of course, we may be feeling a lot of suffering even now. I have bodily pain, I have suffering from other persons or other situations, corona situations, etc. But this is the minimal suffering which we are supposed to suffer maybe much more than this. But due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we are able to serve him, and then he is taking our suffering. Similar to the Vasudevadatta, Lord Chaitanya's associate. He was ready to take all the reactions of sins of all the living entities in the whole universe. And then he was okay to go to hell and eternally suffer for that. That way all the living entities can be liberated. But Lord Chaitanya did not allow him to suffer, still liberated all living entities. So that is the extreme compassion, inconceivable compassion of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, which we cannot imitate how he was showing compassion, but we can appreciate and, of course, relish his compassionate nature, but we can try to follow his instructions to us. So we can do whatever little we can to purify ourselves and trying to pass on this message to other people of this world, other living entities, if possible, at least just by chanting loudly. He was mentioning in a lecture I was hearing today, Haridas Thakur mentioned, Prabhupada was repeating, just by chanting loudly, other living entities, not only humans, they will also get benefits. So at least little things, but whatever we can do, we can help Srila Prabhupada to fulfill his mission, to continue this, taking up this Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So I will stop here and look for any reflections or corrections if any one of you have. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Nitai Sachinandan Dev ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Terrific.
Jai Sachinda.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
All those to Prabhupada.
Please have humble obeisances to all glories to Prabhupada.
Since you're such a gentle devotee, you were able to explain and appreciate the wonderful transcendental qualities of Srila Prabhupada so nicely. Very wonderful, inspiring lecture as usual. I also very much appreciated the explanation of relationship of bhakti to the development of devotional qualities and the importance of that you have pointed out by practicing bhakti and then subsequently getting the mercy of association of devotees. That's how one gets these transcendental qualities. You can only get a gift from somebody who actually has that gift. The instructions of Lord Kapil Dev are wonderful and very inspiring. Even his wonderful mother, Devahuti, like you were saying, says, my dear Brahmana, how does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is separation possible? And Kapil Dev says, by seriously discharging devotional service and hearing for a long time about me, that's how that happens. So you just explained that vividly with all these wonderful examples and pastimes. You can actually see the video of Srila Prabhupada honoring Prasadam with the ants going up his arm if you look at Yadubar Prabhuji's video following Srila Prabhupada. That happened. I think it was in Australia, and Srila Prabhupada very calmly proceeded to honor Prasadam. So thank you for describing his transcendental qualities and how by his mercy, by following his instruction, we can also maybe develop some of those. Not artificially, but in the service of Lord Krishna and the devotees. Thank you.
Thank you for elaborating that. Prabhu.
Does anybody else have questions? Appreciation?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Tanvat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for we know that describing qualities of the Lord is so. Qualities of the Lord are so unlimited that even Ananta Shesha, even though he has millions of hoods, feels incomplete. It's inadequate to describe the glories of the Lord. Similarly, the devotees of the Lord are so great, are so wonderful that even their qualities are unlimited. But thank you for giving such a glimpse, giving a glimpse of the innumerable transcendent qualities of Srila Prabhupada and describing and explaining it through so many examples as pastimes. Thank you so much. We feel so connected and grateful to Srila Prabhupada, and it's such the most wonderful example. We've seen in the scriptures so many examples. Sometimes we feel okay, but there's too high. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam goes way on the top. Chaitanya Charitamrita brings it a bit more closer, but Srila Prabhupada is the closest who we can actually see. Still, the videos are available. The way he conducted himself, the way he talked, the way he walked, the way he chanted, everything. So thank you so much for describing this wonderful qualities. Thank you so much. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Thank you. Prabhupada's mercy.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. We love hearing your classes and your lectures. Even though you're far away, Srila Prabhupada was in India, and the devotees were in San Francisco, and they were feeling great separation. And Srila Prabhupada said, "What's the problem? I'm here chanting Hare Krishna. You're in San Francisco chanting Hare Krishna. If we do that, we're connected always." So in that way, we can have that connection with Srila Prabhupada. And his amazing mercy that he actually saw some value in us, that he felt it was worthwhile to explain all the imports of the Shastras and connect us to the Sampradaya. That's amazing. Okay, thank you very much. We'll Prema Vardhana Das Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you all devotees for attending and blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Narottam Vilas Prabhu is going to kindly. So Mayapur TV, you can see this on Mayapur TV every day. The Aarti, so we're showing the Aarti right now of Shishinithai Satchananda. Thank you, Narottam Vilas Prabhu. Oh, is there a devotee scheduled to chant the Mahamantra?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Do you know are you chanting?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, sorry for interrupting you. Please proceed.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nandan Bhagwan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, God Premanandi, Hari.
Thank you, Joshita and Tulsi. I'm Joshita and Anirudh. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And I think we'll now be having Nrsingadev Arti being sung by Sri Prada. Sri Prada, are you available?
Yes, Prabhuji, can you hear me nicely?
Yes, we can hear you very nicely. Thank you.
Okay. Namaste, Namaste, Narasimhaya. Hiranyakashi Puraksha Srila Hito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha Rahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha Sharanam Javakara Kamala Vare Naka Madhubuta Shekha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Dano Brenga Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Narasimhadev 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 Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev 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 Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Prahlad Maharaj Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Prahlad Maharaj Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Shriya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Shriya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Hari Bol. Thank you, Prabhuji, and Hari Bol.
Wow, amazing. Were you playing harmonium also?
Oh, no, my sister was.
Wow, wonderful. And who was playing kartal? Your dad?
No.
Well, that was beautiful. Wonderful. It's nice to see you growing up so nicely in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
You have a beautiful altar behind you too. Did you help put everything there?
No.
Thank you all. So, Lord Nrsimhadev Bhagwan ki jai, Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, thank you all for joining. Important announcements. I'll first announce, for the pleasure of the deities, book distribution was done by Paramakana Prabhu and Diego Prabhu. Paramakana Prabhu did last Saturday, and then Diego Prabhu did this week. And Diego Prabhu's counts are 7 Bhagavad Gitas, 1 Intro to Srimad Bhagavatam, 3 Signs of Self-Realization were distributed this week. So all glories to these wonderful devotees who are trying to spread the message of love of God. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then tonight we're going to have a lecture by His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji at 6 p.m. our time, continuing Krishna conception of God. So please join. Please join a little bit early. I know Narottam Vilas Prabhu usually opens these up at like 10 minutes before the actual event. That way the speaker who's coming, coming through from India doesn't have to wait for us. And we can get more association and instruction by Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji. I know he's very seriously been contemplating this topic and has dedicated a lot of time and energy to developing it. So please join up for it. So it's pretty simple, tinyurl.com/Living Gita, and that gives you the log on. Okay, this coming Wednesday, as Prema Vardhana Prabhuji was nicely describing, is Srila Prabhupada's arrival to the US. So please take that opportunity to remember Srila Prabhupada and his mercy. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Temple is open at 1 p.m. so you can have darshan 1 to 2:30. Today's, I don't know whether Narottam Vilas Prabhu, are you able to go back and show Shishya Nitai Satyanandan, their full body?
Just one thing, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Okay. I don't know whether you noticed in the close-ups that Narottam Vilas Prabhu was showing, you can see how beautiful Shishya Nitai Satyanandan's feet are. They were painted by
Radhakatha Mataji.
Radhakatha Mataji and Premrupa Madhavi Mataji. I mean, just look at how beautiful their lotus feet are. So I wanted to appreciate that effort to paint the deity so nicely. They're so beautiful. The paint just highlights their beauty. Can you go up and show the rest of the bodies? And I also wanted to appreciate that if you look at the garland today, that was made by Jai Lakshmi Mataji and family. Jai Lakshmi Mataji is a very expert garland maker, and she's returning to the garland making service. All glories to her service for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and Shishya Nitai Satyananda. So very beautiful garlands, Mataji and Prabhu. Thank you for doing that in spite of the great distance you come from. I think we really appreciate that effort. Thank you very much. So I don't have any other further announcements. Anything else anybody else wants to announce that I've forgotten? Okay. So if nothing else, have a safe week. Srila Prabhupada, the parents' arrival to US is on Wednesday. Please remember it. And please join up today for Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji's lecture. As FYI, these lectures will not be kept recorded in YouTube or Facebook. So if you want to hear it, you have to join it. And that's per Prabhuji's request. Hare Krishna. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Narottam Vilas Prabhu, for all that you're doing. Oh,
Thank you.
BBC also wanted to emphasize that this weekend has been starting from the 3rd to the 7th. It's supposed to be Shravanam week, meaning reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So I want to appreciate the effort by devotees, Vilas Prabhu and Prema Madhavi Mataji, and all the devotees that have been reading nicely morning and evening. You know, it's nice that this is Shravanam week, but this has been going on since the lockdown for coronavirus occurred in March. So, you know, that's really wonderful that our congregation and these devotees are engaging in this service. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, take care. Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Bol.
Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hmm.